Hello and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in the Rocket Pool community. My name is Wack. Today is April 29th and today's episode is going to cover a whole bunch of news. We have Rocket Pool news about Devnet 2 update, when that's coming. We're going to be talking about oDAO members leaving. On the staking side, we're going to be talking about Constellation closing down and a critical update that's coming out as well from one of the clients. And on the Ethereum news, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of Ethereum Foundation announcements today. Also, EOF is dead for now, and a whole lot more. So let's get started.
10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Okay, so the place to start with is this news about Devnet 2. So this is something that we've been waiting for a while. It's pretty much a month late at this stage from when we were expecting it. That's of course with Haleshki going down and Hoodie being a pain in the butt to get your validators up and running. Everything's been kind of delayed and a whole lot more as well. So let's hear it from Langers. He says, a quick update on where we are with Saturn. He says the withdrawal proof component turned out to be more challenging than we initially expected. On top of that, we've had to work through Pectra compatibility issues, which added extra complexity. He said the good news is that we're now in a strong position, though there are some follow-on design considerations that we'll need to consider later. He says right now we're packaging up the withdrawal proof and wrapping up smoke testing on other components. He says our goal is to have Devnet 2 later this week. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. So it looks like, there were some challenges along this recent period, a whole lot more than I just had mentioned, but it looks like the team are working through it and making progress on that. And hopefully, things will get back closer to being on track soon. We're basically a month late right now, so it all depends on how much they can catch up. But the initial estimate of Saturn in July is looking a bit more unlikely, and something like August or maybe even September for Saturn 1. I think at this time now looks more likely, and we'll have to keep our eyes on that to see how it all goes. Okay, so there was a couple of oDAO votes going on. These were proposals 18 and 19, and these passed with the votes going through. They're reaching quorum, and the rocket scientists were the last oDAO seat to get through in order for the vote to reach quorum, and then the vote was executed as well. So the two rocket pool nodes have been kicked. However, there's still one step remaining where the rocket pool node will have to do a leave transaction on their oDAO node, and once that's done, then they will be officially out of the oDAO. But yeah, that's it. That's gone through. The next one will be now proposal 20, which will be to remove Gitcoin from the oDAO as well. They've requested to leave and wind down their oDAO seat, and that actually will bring us under target for what the PDAO charter requested as how many oDAO seats we wanted. So hopefully that will all go smoothly. But yeah, this was pushed through, and now we just need to get it done on the team side, and then those two nodes will leave the oDAO. Okay, Halul wrote a script, and this was something that I've been curious about for a while, is to show how much voting power each delegate has. I am still number one in the Rocket Pool community, so I have 2,145 vote power. Patches number 2 with 1,888, Ramadan number 3 with 1,314. Halululo has been climbing up the rankings recently, is now at 1,297. Then Samus, Dave, Noshua, and Valdorf down to number 8, which is actually surprising because Valdorf, myself, and Patches were quite a lot ahead of everyone else at one point. But me and Valdorf and myself, we were two of the early people to say, hey, stop delegating more power to us. Patches joined that as well, and a whole bunch of other people said that as well at the time. But there's actually a really nice list of people with voting delegate power here. Invis has never actually voted, and he's number 9 with 962 votes. Jasper said that he won't take part in any more governance stuff as long as there are uncertainties about the legal status of DAOs. So there are a couple of people here who won't be voting. So if you are if you have delegated your votes to Invis or Jasper, and if you want your votes to count in the near future, then it might make sense for you to delegate your votes to someone else or vote yourselves when the time comes. Then there was a little bit of a discussion here. Blue AVM says Halula's progress has been quite impressive here. He says you've been a gold asset to this community. Thank you, sir. Well deserved delegation by community. And I absolutely agree with that. I think it's absolutely wonderful that Halulu has been recognized for all his amazing contributions. There's so many contributions that Halulu makes, like in front of, behind the scenes, as a community member, as an IMC member, just doing some really, really cool stuff. And it truly is, like, we're so blessed that, we have him as part of our community. So that's awesome. Okay, something kind of cool happened, but nowadays when this cool thing happens, it's kind of a double-edged sword, and as always, this is again a double-edged sword. But the cool thing that happened is that rETH is back at on peg. That's a 0% discount, 0% premium. It's on peg. So this was something that we were expecting to happen. If you had watched Rocket Fuel last week, we'll come to the reasons why we're back on peg in a few minutes' time. But here we're back on peg, so maybe it means that we'll start seeing some deposits coming in again instead of people going to the secondary market to buy their tokens on the secondary market. They might be coming to the protocol instead. And let me see if we can see if it's showing that. And I'm trying to go to Rocket Scan, but it's not doing anything. So maybe I can come back to that tab later and see if it loads. Oh wait, it's loading now. Here we go. It's just a little bit slow. So yeah, in the last couple of days, no, we've not had any meaningful amount of rETH mint. There was 2 ETH minted on the 27th, 15 ETH minted on the 28th. That's not really anything meaningful. So yeah, I'll keep an eye on that and see what it looks like over the next couple of days. Okay, next we have some staking news, and the big staking news is that Constellation shut down their Rocket Pool validators, and that's no more. So here we can see that yesterday afternoon there were a whole bunch of ETH being distributed from Constellation Supernode, and it just went on for a while. And there was rETH here being burned, which is like the arbing happening. But yeah, they basically exited almost all their validators. And if you have a look, Halula says, I think Nodesec got wrecked. They didn't arbit. And yeah, he says, yep, that's it. So it looks like they were trying to arbit, but they weren't able to arbit, although that's what it kind of looked like. And then that's the exit arb. And then here is, we saw they had 6 mini pools left at this point, and 0 mini pool limit, and their RPL 460,000 RPL was going to be withdrawn most likely, and the RPL bond was, yeah, but that doesn't make a difference, right? Those numbers don't make sense anymore. So yeah, that's it. Constellation has shut down officially pretty much, and they are now starting to get validators online for their Stakewise vaults. And then here, Halula said, like, what happened with the ARB? Was it you guys, was it Nodesec who did it, or was it some random person? And Wanda said it was a random person, but there's a funny story and we'll post about it today. However, I asked if there's been an update with that, and they haven't posted it. Oh yeah, here you go. Okay, so there you go. Wanda says, not yet. I didn't have time to do a full post-mortem today. So he says, long story short, we were playing a fun game where we kind of gambled for the sake of trying to capture it quickly before the discount was reduced, but someone saw us pull a somewhat risky move for the sake of speed, and they used that to beat us. They were very gracious about it and gave us a small slice of the winnings. I presume they don't want to be identified because I haven't been contacted, but it was very kind of them. He said, I'll do a more technical write-up tomorrow, hopefully assuming I have time, of what happened, but once I double check the history. So Han says it's very interesting, looking forward to the technical write-up. Love reading about this stuff. Wanda says it was really fun. Haven't done a CTF with this size of a pot before. If we had infinite time, it would have been a game. It wouldn't have been a game at all because we could have captured it no problem, but we're just doing it 30 minutes away from crossing the finish line when they beat us to it. And he says the time pressure of the shrinking discount was that what changed everything. Is I'm going to go play a game now, but I'll do the write-up tomorrow. So and then Joe says, I've got some stories to tell once it's out. So I'm curious to see what that is going to look like, and I'll put that in Rocket Fuel tomorrow once that information is out, or on the Wednesday's episode, most likely. Okay, moving on to a client update here, and this is from Nimbus. And Nimbus is saying this is a high urgency release for Ethereum and Gnosis mainnets due to Petra hard forks. And then there's an important issue here. It says it fixes a potential missed MEV block starting with Electra build API, and that's the key thing here. So on as this update came through here, Fornax put out an update in the Rocketball community saying, attention Nimbus users, version 25.4.1 has been released to fix issues related to MEV boost block proposals. And there's a link to the GitHub page. It says Nimbus users should update manually to this version to avoid missing block proposals. It says also for Geth users using archive mode, there's a new Geth version 1.15.10 fixing a deadlock condition. It says these versions will be introduced in the next smart node, but we recommend manually upgrading it until it's available. So because it's a crucial update, then it makes sense for you to update that if you're running Nimbus or a Geth archive node. Okay, let's move on to some Ethereum news now. And the key bit of Ethereum news here is a few blog posts that came out from the Ethereum Foundation. There was 3 of them in total. So it says we're excited to share these updates from the Ethereum board and management team. So the first is a post from Aya and Vitalik. So it's a restatement and update on Ethereum Foundation's vision, principles, and values for this new era. And then there's some information. And then the second is a post from new co-executive directors, Shao Wei and Thomas, and update on their focus areas and how they plan to achieve their vision. And then next we have an update of the structure of the Ethereum Foundation, management team, board, and functions of each, and the information there as well. So there was a question here by Laura Shin about how many votes Vitalik has, and there's no responses with this so far. So yeah, she's just asking how many votes Vitalik has on the board, but there's been no update. So let's have a look at the three blog posts. The first one is the Ethereum Foundation's vision. So this is by Aya and Vitalik, and the vision is basically to steward the infinite garden. What their role is, by practicing useful subtraction, we've empowered others in the ecosystem to take majority of responsibilities. And he says we see our role as twofold. We do what no one else can do today. We help others do tomorrow what only we can do today. And it says we are where we step in, what others can't do, and how we help others to grow. And their approach is adaptive evolution, thoughtful complexity, community empowerment, and core principle, long-term thinking, stewardship values, and purposeful subtraction. And they've got some goals ahead about maximizing the number of people who directly or indirectly use Ethereum in such a way that they benefit the Ethereum's underlying values. So hey, that's me, I hope. And another goal is maximize the resilience of Ethereum's technical and social infrastructure, and some information there as well. So you can read the blog post to get the full information there. Let's have a look at what Thomas and Xiaowei say, and they're saying that this is a moment of transition and opportunity, and they've got principles that they want to focus on, such as censorship resistance, open source innovations, privacy protection, security. And remembering these values, they've set major directions for the next 12 months, such as scaling Ethereum mainnet, scaling blobs, improving UX, including L2 interoperability and application layer. And then Thomas has a note here about some of the things that he wants to work on. Xiaowei has a note about some of the things she wants to work on, and a few to build together. There's information there about how Ethereum is not a monolith and how we're all building together, which is really cool. And then finally, the Ethereum Foundation management and board structure. So the new management is co-EDs, of course. So that's Xiaowei and Thomas, the co-executive directors. Then Bastian is, let me see, a management member, and Josh Stark is a management member as well. And the board of directors include Vitalik, Aya, Patrick, who has to be there for Swiss political reasons, and Xiaowei, who's acting as a bridge between management and the board. And yeah, that's pretty cool. You can read all that information, of course, by following the links in the tweet that is linked below. Okay, the biggest topic of this weekend was a discussion on EOF, which is the EVM object format, which is updating opcodes and how execution works on mainnet. And here, Georgios actually had a post. This is Georgios from Paradigm saying, I was one of EOF's biggest supporters. Now I think we might be making a mistake. Speaking for rETH, nix it altogether, replace it with EIP 7912. If we cannot rally core dev teams on one, do EOF with code and gas introspection restored, and then screenshot with full context. So he does it here. A TLDR is they're against EOF. And client teams cannot rally around that, then we'll disagree and commit to EOF with code and gas introspection restored, and EOF with code gas introspection banned is an unforced error that should be avoided at all costs. We don't think the recent Vitalik Buterin discussion around risk 5 affects this conversation at all. So this has been quite a divisive topic. It's been quite controversial, and it looks like there was basically a go no go taking place on Monday the 28th during a call about this. So a whole lot of people came out on over the weekend, including here this was from the 26th over the weekend, saying, hey, we don't want this going through. The voices saying that we don't want this going through like really added up. So here there's this is a person from Aragon, Julio, saying someone who previously slightly favored EOF now come around and realize that EOF in its current form is a very bad idea. It's absolutely unacceptable. That tooling needs to change to accommodate for it. So a lot of applications, contracts, etc. built on top of Ethereum right now use like tooling, like code that's already built and ready that you can just use for your applications. And the idea is that some of this might need to be rewritten, which of course is not good. You want those contracts to be immutable. You don't want them to be touching them ever, pretty much. But they might be forced to. He says this is mostly on me because I never interested myself in it and always saw it as a cool exploratory improvement on the EVM. He said at this point, if the all-core dev process is in, I will live with it, but if I'm given a second chance, I will be against it. So yeah, so the voices coming out against it over the weekend were quite strong. Fabda here put out a vote for it on ETH Pulse, and the vote was very, very strongly in favor of do not include EOF. Like the question was, should Ethereum pursue the implementation of EOF? And 98.3% of people said with their ETH voted, they said no, and 1.7% of people who voted with their ETH amounts said yes. In terms of actual people, 49 people voted, 41 said no, and 48 said 8 said yes. So it was massively in favor of the community signaling that we shouldn't include this. And then even Thomas got involved on the 28th before the call, saying the important clarification on the EOF debate. There's significant EOF debate today, but one crucial misunderstanding needs to be addressed clearly, is that the current EOF discussion is not related to the upcoming Petra upgrade scheduled for May 7th. The Petra upgrade does not include EOF, nor intended to include EOF. Everything on Petra is already planned for the May 7th release. Today's EOF discussion pertains to the subsequent network upgrade for Saka, which has not been scheduled, but we're aiming for Q3, Q4 timeline, approximately September, October. So there's a couple of interesting pieces of information here. First of all, it looks like some people out there were confused about when EOF was or wasn't going to go into Ethereum. This was, of course, always going to be for the Saka upgrade, not for Petra, because that's, of course, been done for months now, pretty much. It's been ready for months. And the second thing is here, a timeline for Saka potentially of September, October. Now, normally when people say, Q3, Q4, it ends up being towards the end of Q4. But here, it looks like Thomas is actually aiming for September for Saka, which is absolutely amazing, because I think that'll be the quickest hard fork shipped after one after another, which is incredible. Once the call started, Nixo here was working on the call. She says, the thing I'm understanding from the first 15 minutes of this EOF discussion is that the conversation is much more nuanced than this represented on crypto Twitter. There's a lot more support for some version of it than I've seen here. And then there was notes that were being taken that Nixo was kind of sharing. And she said every client team has some support for option D, while some, mostly Besu and Nethermind, still support option A. And then she says, she was kind of giving updates of different people saying different things. Marius says, no one is changing their mind here. We're no closer to a decision here. Paths forward are stick with our decision to keep it, or realize the amount of controversy means no consensus and we should remove it. And growing sentiment in the call is basically this is controversial, it's not ready. And then that is kind of what ended up happening. We let Tim Baiko explain what happened. Oh, actually, no. Yeah, before Tim Biko explains, Hani Abu here had a take saying, listening to the call, at this point it sounds like we're trying to push EUF because it's something that has been dropped from previous upgrades, has been worked on for a long time. He says we should not be doing an upgrade for the sake of doing it. The amount of work put into a proposal should have no bearing on whether or not it gets included in the future hard fork. And then Julio here says EUF got removed from Fusaka. Actually, let me go back and get the Tim Biko thing from here. So Tim says EUF decision summary. We will remove EUF from Fusaka decision about other potential Fusaka execution layer EIPs will happen next all core devs execution with strong bias towards already considered for improvement EIPs. For Glamsterdam, we were already planning to revamp the all core devs process to bring in more external input into prioritization. EOF advocates may propose this as a core feature of the fork, but the process should be redesigned to accommodate more voices from the community. And it says, see disinformation. And it says, I realize many people are disappointed with this outcome, including many who have spent years of their lives working on EOF. I'm sorry for not getting us a clear outcome earlier. It's in part my fault, and the process failed to do better earlier. Again, he says, I'm optimistic we can improve this going forward, but I realize this doesn't undo what went wrong with Pectra and Fusaka. So the idea was that Fusaka was going to be this upgrade basically where PDAS was going to get shipped for the blob count increase, and EOF potentially would go in there as well. But it seems like, that has just been an area that people couldn't agree on. Julio here says it got removed. Hopefully we can fix our all core devs process next time. Anyway, okay, I'm tired. And then Nixo was sharing that information. And here Storm, who works with Paradigm as well, says that big update, EOF is probably dead due to lack of rough consensus being reached on the core dev call. So this is a massive milestone. It's symbolic of Ethereum turning a new page and evolving towards maximal consideration of user impact. He said there'll be growing pains. Some explicit statements heard on the call is, on this issue, we should only listen to core devs, not users. We should ship EOF just to respect the process. Many different versions of sunk cost fallacy. He says, thankfully, these voices did not win the debate as they did in the past. Everyone should be excited to see what this new chapter of Ethereum will bring. So it looks like there's stuff. There's a contention, but yeah, because there's contention because of this stuff, it's not going to be included in Fusaka. And because it's not going to be included in Fusaka, there's a chance that it just might not be included ever, because as we saw with the comment from earlier, where other EIPs might be better at doing something instead of the EUF updates. And as Vitalik was posting about the RISC-V thing, it might be worth it to just go to the ZKify, the EVM, instead of using EUF and then potentially ZKifying it. So yeah, let's see what comes. Okay, so we mentioned earlier with the blog posts that Thomas has put out an official statement. So here he says that while both Xiaowei and I are already fully operational within the Ethereum Foundation, he says today we're bringing more official announcements. So he says, I'm happy to be starting my term, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there was one piece of interesting tweet here that I want to bring to your attention. So he says, in the context of my roles at Nethermind and a soon to be announced Ethereum focused VC fund, he says that was already arranged when the EF reached out to me. He says, we believe that the 2-year term protects the Ethereum Foundation by making sure that my role at EF does not grow too much in power. But that the second part there is quite interesting as well, about limiting it to a 2-year term to control the amount of power Thomas has. I want to focus on the Ethereum focused VC fund. It looks like Thomas, was involved with this. It's really interesting because for a long time, there's been criticism of Ethereum that the Ethereum Foundation and the community doesn't care about app builders. They just kind of want them to go out there and do their own thing, and there's not much support. And having a VC fund tends to be a good way of getting support to developers. So it looks like Thomas was about to start working with Ethereum focused VC fund, and if that comes forward, it means hopefully that Thomas is in a good position to support apps and app devs. So that seems quite promising. I don't know what his role will that be going forwards, but I guess we'll find out what's going to happen. Okay, there was this really great post that came out by Justin Drake, and this is very much in stark contrast to one of the previous posts by Justin Drake, where people were kind of upset about it, saying that 0.1% of transactions will be on mainnet, with 99.9% of transactions for Ethereum being on L2s, and basically, that the L1 will only be for certain people or institutions, and people just didn't like that. They were like, L1's for everyone, blah blah blah, all this kind of stuff. Well, this post from Justin Drake was a lot more bullish in some ways and a lot more supported by people. It's really cool. So he says 1 gigagas, which is about 10,000 transactions per second on the Ethereum layer ones with ZK VMs. So how's this going to happen? He said this is going to happen with no compromises. So we will still be using consumer hardware for the ZK VMs. We will still use home internet for data availability sampling. We will still be censorship resistant, which is with Fossil, which is censorship inclusion lists, and then we'll have 100% uptime because of client diversity. We'll have 8,000 consensus nodes, and it says built for internet and finance, believe in something real. So a lot of people are really happy with this, that Justin is, talking about the positives of Ethereum in a clear way, talking about how the values of Ethereum are, what we have and how we are going to do all this amazing stuff while maintaining those values. Awesome. Like really, really great post. It was seen 200,000 times, 180,000 likes. And then some questions like, what do you mean by home internet? And Justin said, validators should not have to download L1 transactions to verify data availability. It's not sustainable home internet in the gigagas frontier. Instead, validators will perform data ability sampling. And then there were some more questions as well about, believing something real. But a lot of people were excited about this. Gabriel said more of this. And yeah, so there was a lot of support. People like here, Corey saying, love it. And then Charles saying that's a great roadmap for Ethereum scaling. But yeah, the gigagas era of Ethereum is coming. It looks like a lot of this stuff will be able to happen in the next couple of years, which is really exciting to see. Okay, so how do we get that? Well, here there's a new EIP, which is 9698, and this is by Dankrad. Dankrad, of course, was one of the people who was involved in the dank sharding, which is blobs, proto dank sharding with proto lambda and Dankrad, and getting the blobs stuff going. Well, he's got this new EIP that he's putting through, saying that add exponential gas limit increases. So here the little blurb of it says EIP 9698 proposes an exponential increase to the Ethereum gas limit, allowing it to grow 100x over 4 years through client-side defaults. This aims to create predictable and sustainable gas limit trajectory, enhancing coordination and transparency in the gas limit adjustment process while maintaining backward compatibility with existing mechanisms. So right now we have around 36 million gas on Ethereum. That just means that we have the capacity to process 36 million gas. Like that's the processing power of Ethereum. But with this proposal, what Dankrad is saying that we're going to go 100 times, which is like 3 gigagas, which is pretty amazing. Like increasing 100%, 100 time capacity. That's awesome. That's even going further than what Justin was saying in the previous post. Now, how do we get here? We don't just tweak the numbers, but there's a whole slew of upgrades that kind of have to happen to make this possible. But the idea is that we're pushing those updates, we're pushing those limits, and pushing everything together. But again, this is people were really happy about this. David Phelps, who's sometimes critical of Ethereum, says let's go, and Manu says keep it moving, love it. Yeah, this is really cool. So here, ZKLEO says, what about state bloat? Is not a thing anymore? Well, there's interesting things about state bloat, and I don't have the full answer, but one of the some of the EIPs that are being considered for future hard forks is statelessness, and the need to store the state, which hopefully shouldn't be as intense. There was another thing as well that the state could grow. With the expiry of data, the amount of runway we'll have for state growth will actually be much better, and hopefully it'll be a lot more manageable. So there are a couple of things there. I need to dig into that a little bit more to be able to give you guys all the information that you need. But yeah, this is really exciting. Okay, so Glassnode here had a post about ETF flows, and they talked about Bitcoin for a little while, but after that they talked about Ethereum. And one of the interesting things happened here said US Ethereum ETFs recorded their first positive net inflow after 8 consecutive weeks of outflows. So hopefully this is a shift in sentiment around ETH. We've had some brutal weeks there. ETH price, of course, is clear for everyone to see how far down it's come, and that was also shown in the ETFs with there being 8 outflow weeks instead of inflows. And this was a modest week. 40,000 ETH came in, but maybe it signals a potential shift in sentiment is what Glassnode says. We haven't had a look at the ETF numbers for a while because they're just plain depressing. But let's have a quick look now. So you can see here, on the 21st, there was outflows of 25 million, but here on the 22nd, we had 38 million inflows. 23rd, we had 24 million outflows. Then 2 big days of 63 million inflows and 104 million inflows, which ended up having the week be positive. For today, we still haven't received, for the 28th, sorry, by the time I was recording this, we still hadn't received data from BlackRock about the Ether. But other than that, it was 3 million negative. So that's going to be one to keep an eye out later when we get that data. But yeah, that hopefully is a shift in sentiment, and it's a much needed one. Okay, let's finish with some other news now. And there's some political policy regulation stuff coming out of the EU that has a whole bunch of people scratching their heads. This is a screenshot from James Smith. I think this is on LinkedIn, saying that the European Union are putting through a policy to delete entire blockchains for GDPR compliance. So here James explains, he says the European Data Protection Board dropped a bombshell. If blockchain data can't be deleted individually, this may require deleting the whole blockchain. So basically there's this idea in the European Union that, if you want data deleted from the internet, you can reach out to people and have data deleted. That includes, profiles and that kind of stuff and a whole lot of things. I think the idea they're kind of extrapolating that to a blockchain, saying, if Bob wants to delete some transactions from blockchain like a year ago, he should be able to go to the blockchain and say, hey, delete those transactions. I don't want them visible anymore. And because Bob can't do that, because it's a blockchain, everything's public and it's built on top of each other, you can't go and delete previous blocks of information. That the European Union basically saying just delete all the blockchain, which is obviously like preposterous. So here it says the new guidelines explicitly recommend permissionless blockchains. No, they recommend permissioned blockchains over public ones. Organization must justify using blockchains under necessity principles. Smart contracts may require human overrides. Global node distribution triggers complex cost border requirements. On-chain data storage is actively discouraged, and the timing is critical. The public discussion for this ends on June 30th after the guidelines become enforcement standards across Europe. So what does this mean for Ethereum and Web3? This is the very architecture of public blockchains like Ethereum is being challenged without significant pushback. We're facing a regulatory framework that fundamentally misunderstands decentralized technology. This isn't just about compliance headaches, it's about whether public blockchains can legally operate in Europe. So what can you do? Read the papers, guidelines, submit feedback, support European crypto initiatives, and share the posts to raise awareness. Mark Zilla, who's French, says, I wish them luck to send the fine to Satoshi Nakamoto. And yeah, other people were just like, how does this even work? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Yeah, what a mess. Anyway, Lefteris here, who also lives in Europe, says the EU's approach to crypto makes me lose hope for the idea of the EU as a whole. Delete public blockchains, so non-enforceable regulation. Why can't you spend this energy, all those paper pushes, for something constructive like closing the innovation gap between the EU and the US? And then people are saying Lefteris go run for parliament. So yeah, thank you all. On that note, I'm going to end today's episode. So thank you all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. I hope you all had a lovely weekend. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.